In 1976, Jessica Lange debuted within a $23 million mechanical disaster that nearly ended a legacy before the first Oscar was ever won. Critics labeled her a blonde starlet with the depth of a matchstick, unaware that this newcomer was actually a disciplined student of Parisian corporeal mime. This dissonance between the studio's sexualized commodity and the artist's internal well of rage defines the most significant architectural shift in American performance. 50 years later, Jessica Lange stands as a Triple Crown icon with a billion-dollar box office footprint, yet remains Hollywood's most vocal defector. Why did the most celebrated actress of a generation decide to begin phasing out in early 2026? How does the loneliness of the North Woods continue to fuel a refusal to play the Hollywood game? To understand the internal mechanics of Jessica Lange, we have to look past the Hollywood sign and into the freezing student riots of 1968 Paris. This is the 0 point, a period of nomadic bohemian isolation that few fans truly grasp. Before the cameras, there was the body. Between 1971 and 1973, Lange wasn't studying scripts. She was studying the skeletal discipline of corporeal mime under the master Etienne Decroux. Decroux didn't teach acting. He taught the crystallization of the moment, the idea that a performer's primary tool is not the voice, but the physical vulnerability of the frame. As detailed in Anthony Uzorowski's Jessica Lange, An Adventurer's Heart, this Parisian apprenticeship was a radical departure from the American starlet trajectory. While her contemporaries were navigating the casting couches of Los Angeles, Lange was performing pantomime in Washington Square Park for loose change and living out of a Volkswagen. She was an artiste bohemian who socialized with Karl Lagerfeld but remained essentially invisible. This isolation was a choice. Lange has frequently cited the loneliness of the North Woods in her native Cloquet, Minnesota, as the marrow of her bones. Her father, Al Lange, was a man of extreme moods and unfulfilled dreams, a salesman who moved the family a dozen times before Jessica graduated high school. This nomadic restlessness instilled a fundamental detachment. By the time she returned to New York in 1973, working as a waitress at the Lion's Head Tavern, she had already mastered the art of being a fly on the wall. She wasn't looking for fame, she was looking for an investigation. The industry saw a face. Lange brought a ghost trained in the silence of the French avant-garde. But while she had mastered the silence of Paris, she was about to face the deafening roar of a $23 million machine. The year 1982 represents a statistical pivot point in the history of the Academy Awards. It is the moment the starlet died and the thespian was born in a fire of dual nominations. For 6 years, Lange had been haunted by the campy specter of King Kong. The industry had categorized her as a douane, a damsel, a body, a commodity. Then, in a single 12-month cycle, she shattered the paradigm, becoming the first performer in 40 years to be nominated for Best Actress and Best Supporting Actress in the same year. The data here is staggering. For Frances, she portrayed the tragic, lobotomized life of Frances Farmer. For Tootsie, she played the vulnerable Julie Nichols. It was a calculated binary. One was a state of rage maintained for 18 weeks. The other was a comic relief that showcased a delicate, translucent femininity. This wasn't just a career win, it was a systemic overhaul. Winning the Oscar for Tootsie, while being recognized for the raw, psychological brutality of Frances, signaled to the studios that Lange could no longer be contained by a single type. This pivot was fueled by a refusal to play the Hollywood game. Lange has stated that box office success has never meant anything to her. While she won the Golden Globe for New Star of the Year in 1977, she immediately took a 3-year hiatus to study at HB Studio. She was retrofitting her talent while the industry was trying to sell her image. This 1982 breakthrough was the catalyst that allowed her to shun conventional leading lady roles for The Edge, the characters on the verge of exploding. It was the moment she secured her artistic autonomy, moving from a pawn of Dino de Laurentiis to a producer of her own narratives. The industry finally took her seriously, but the cost of that recognition was a well of rage that was beginning to overflow into her reality. The core of Lange's credibility lies in a technique she describes as dipping into the well. This isn't just acting, it's a form of psychological excavation. In the academic analysis of performance, this aligns with what is explored in the journal Representage regarding the embodied experiences of actors. As explained by the research in portrayals of career women in Hollywood films, many performers struggle with the glass ceiling of one-dimensional roles. But Lange bypassed this by adopting a radical, almost self-destructive emotional recall. During the filming of Frances, the toll was physical. She remained in a state of rage for 12 to 18 hours a day, a process that left her with huge black circles under her eyes and led to a nervous breakdown a day. This is the anchor of her craft, the belief that truth only exists at rock bottom. She didn't just play farmer, she inhabited the atmospheric trauma of the 1940s mental institutions. Critics like Roger Ebert noted that her performance was so driven, it seemed she had an intuitive understanding of the tragic misfit. This methodology creates a paradox. While the method allowed her to transcend the stereotypical blonde roles, it also created a volatile intersection between her art and her identity. She has admitted that the anger required for her roles frequently spilled into her personal life. This investigation, as she calls it, requires a total emotional identification that most actors are unwilling to sustain. It is the difference between performing a character and crystallizing an ordeal. This commitment to the raw and the edge would become her trademark, but as the 1980s progressed, it would also distance her from the increasingly corporate, stockholder-friendly shift of the major studios. The rock bottom had been reached, but as she moved into the 90s, the system she occupied began to look less like an artistic community and more like a factory. In the flow of Hollywood power, there is a recurring mirage, the successful failure. The 1976 remake of King Kong is the definitive case study. On paper, the film was a triumph. It grossed $90,614,445 worldwide on a $23 million budget, a return on investment of approximately 293%. It set a December opening record and was highly profitable. Yet the studio, Paramount, and producer Dino De Laurentiis labeled it an underperformer. The paradox lies in the gap between reality and expectation. De Laurentiis had publicly predicted the film would outgross Jaws and reach $150 million domestically. Because it failed to hit an impossible metric, the industry conflated the film's mechanical failures, the life-sized robo-ape that appeared for less than 15 seconds, with Lange's performance. This is the starlet trap. The studio infrastructure controlled the narrative, and they used the perceived failure to keep talent in line, as noted by industry analysts. For Lange, this was the first encounter with the hegemony of the blockbuster. It taught her that in the eyes of the studio, creativity is secondary to the satisfaction of the stockholder. This realization is what drove her eventually into independent film and co-production, such as the 1984 film Country. She understood early that to survive, she had to navigate a system that would just as easily discard her for a younger model once her legs, at the box office, began to shorten. This King Kong ghost stayed with her, fueling a lifelong skepticism of big comic book franchise films and the frantic editing of modern cinema. She had survived the ape, but she was about to enter a partnership that would prove far more volatile and transformative than any studio contract. The most significant architectural shift in Lange's life occurred not in a studio, but on the set of Frances in 1982. This was the meeting of two feral energies, Jessica Lange and the Pulitzer-winning playwright Sam Shepard. Their relationship would span 27 years, defined by a wild dynamism that Lange described as a cocktail of drinking, fighting, and walking down the freeway trying to get away. Shepard, the man who called country music the sound of the terrible and impossible relationship between American males and females, found in Lange a modesty and humbleness that matched his own press-skittish nature. They stayed far away from Los Angeles, living in Virginia, New Mexico, and Minnesota, raising 3 children in a clan-like environment. This was a tactical retreat from the Hollywood mirage. By living in the rural Midwest, Lange was able to preserve the Northwoods marrow that fueled her work. However, the partnership was anchored in a shared restlessness. Shepard was a man of horse eyes, prone to sudden departures and long silences. Lange admitted she found regular existence palatable only a couple of months at a time before she was ready to go mad and head to a film location for a release. The separation in 2009, not made public until 2011, was the quiet end of an era. It was fueled by Shepard's recurring struggle with addiction and a fundamental difference in their cylinders. Lange was seeking a move away from the obsessive nature of her art, while Shepard remained restless until the end. This partnership was the bedrock of her middle years, providing the emotional depth she would later pour into her third-act resurgence. But as the 2000s arrived, the film industry was beginning to finish her. By 2009, the Hollywood hierarchy had reached a consensus. Women over 60 were finished. This is the systemic ageism that Lange has critiqued for decades, a phenomenon where older actresses are relegated to curtain twitchers or medical aid commercials. Lange's response was a tactical migration to the small screen, starting with Grey Gardens and culminating in the American Horror Story phenomenon. The shift was financially and artistically seismic. On FX, Lange wasn't a supporting player, she was the face of the franchise. Portraying characters like Fiona Good and Elsa Mars, she leaned into gothic camp and themes of vanity and power, narratives the film industry had abandoned. This pivot brought a new generation of golden age superconsumers and reportedly earned her $80,000 per episode. It proved a vital theory. Television had become the only medium where an actress of her stature could earn a decent salary and find roles with rock-bottom, emotional depth. This was a metamorphosis. Lange used the anthology format to showcase her range, winning 2 additional Emmys and a Golden Globe. She proved that age wasn't a decline, but a broadening of the well. Yet, even amidst this success, her critical eye remained sharp. She saw the frantic editing and the prioritization of corporate profit over storytelling. The television resurgence was a sanctuary, but it was also a reminder of the diminished state of the cinematic art form she had dedicated her life to. She had reclaimed the throne, but she was already planning her exit. The investigation was nearing its final chapter, and she was looking for an antidote. Parallel to the noise of American Horror Story, Lange was cultivating a solitary and private practice that the public rarely sees: photography. Armed with a Leica camera given to her by Sam Shepard in the 1990s, Lange began documenting elusive and fleeting moments in black and white. From Mexico to the backroads of Minnesota, her photography, monographed in works like Highway 61, served as the artistic antidote to acting. Acting is collaborative. It depends on a director, a co-star, and a stockholder. Photography depends on no one. It is a return to the fly-on-the-wall status she held in Paris. Lange has admitted that if she could start over, she might pursue the lens to the exclusion of the stage. Her work, exhibited from Moscow to Barcelona, captures a moody transparency reminiscent of the quiet moments she spent on Minnesota porches as a child. In 2026, this pursuit has become her primary focus. As she phases out of filmmaking, the camera remains the only medium where she possesses total autonomy. It is the final realization of the Decroux philosophy, the crystallization of space and time. Her 2024 exhibition, Through Her Lens, in Munich, confirms her standing as a serious visual artist, not just a celebrity with a hobby. The photography is the truth, the acting was the performance. It is the solitary marrow of a woman who never truly felt at home in the fervor of Hollywood. But as the curtain begins to fall on her performance career, she has one last statement to make about the industry that tried and failed to finish her. As of early 2026, Jessica Lange is navigating a phasing out of the film industry. Her statements are piercing. Creativity is secondary now to corporate profits. She has become the leading voice against the diminishing of the art form, citing the shift from storytelling to satisfying stockholders as the catalyst for her retirement. While she remains active with the early 2026 premiere of the film adaptation of Long Day's Journey into Night, her gaze is fixed on the exit. The current landscape is one of frantic editing and comic book franchises, A world where the art of the conversation has been sacrificed for the sake of the bottom line. Lange's current status is a paradox. She is at the peak of her Triple Crown prestige, yet she is more disillusioned than ever. She has seen the hegemony of the studios evolve from the mechanical failures of King Kong into a digital, corporate monolith that has diminished the artist. Her final projects, portraying the morphine-addicted Mary Tyrone or the agging Lillian Hall, are acts of defiance. They are complex, nuanced, and upscale investigations into human weakness, delivered at a time when the industry demands positivity and respectability. As she enters February 2026, Lange stands as a haunting reminder of what Hollywood used to be, a place where an actor could go down to the core. She is leaving not because she has nothing left to give, but because the industry has no room left for the truth. The nomadic child from Cloquet has finally decided that the different kind of life she imagined beyond the horizon isn't found in a movie theater anymore. The real truth of Jessica Lange is that she was never a movie star. She was a mime who got lost in the light. From the $23 million spectacle of a mechanical ape to the $80,000 character studies of an anthology horror show, her career has been a 50-year struggle for artistic autonomy. She achieved the Triple Crown not by playing the game, but by refusing to admit that she was finished when the system told her she was. As she phases out in 2026, her legacy isn't the awards, but the rage and solitude she preserved. She remains the eternal misfit, a woman who used the marrow of her bones to build a monument to the human condition. In an industry of stockholder satisfaction, she was the rare, volatile anomaly. Does Hollywood even deserve an artist who is willing to reach rock bottom, or was she always too real for a world built on mirages?